Gender violence has come into sharp focus recently. August in South Africa is Women's Month, when our mothers and sisters and daughters are supposed to be celebrated. But the country's gender-based violence shows no sign of abating. Well, activist Lisa Vetten is joining me now, and she is an associate at Wits University. Lisa, as I take my seat, please talk to me about this issue of gender-based violence. The Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities talking yesterday about 30 women just in the month of August alone who've died at the hands of their partners. We're not winning this war, are we?
Well, let me put this in perspective. If we look at 1999, there were over 3,700 women killed that year. Last year, there were 2,930, more or less. So our figures don't look like they did in the 1990s. But if we look at 2011-12, we can see that along with the figures for men, our figures for homicide in South Africa have been going up for the last 6-7 years. We need to go back to that period between 2011-12, 2012-13 to understand what is it that happened then, because there's something going on here to produce this pattern. And it's not just in relation to women, it's in relation to men as well.
Before I talk to you about this ministerial task team that you are involved in, which looks at this issue of gender-based violence, there are renewed talks around the death penalty, whether it should be reinstated. Your view on that?
No. I mean, if we go back and we look at South Africa in the 1980s when the death penalty was in force, we certainly didn't see absolutely no violence happening then. In fact, that was one of the most violent periods in South Africa's history. And again, if we look historically, the 1990s were far more violent than the period now, including towards women. If you look at our rape statistics for that decade, and if you look at our intimate femicide or femicide statistics for that decade, they were higher then than they are now. So the death penalty is something that might satisfy our desire for revenge or our desire to make people suffer, but is it going to reduce the number of murders? No. Someone
says chemical castration could be the solution.
No. These are crimes of violence. To me, it's not clear how the amount of testosterone somebody has in their body plays a role in whether or not they go out to murder. Why would you only castrate in relation to women, but not in relation to men, for instance? This is not a problem of sexual attraction or a problem of overwhelming sexual urges. Violence is much more complicated than just a simple response to biological hormones. We need to understand histories, behaviors, and roots if you want to do something really effective. I mean, I understand people are angry and would like to do something that expresses that anger, and another act of violence like hanging or castration might satisfy that. But is it going to address the problem? No.
There's a ministerial task team that you're part of, which seeks to address gender-based violence, particularly, I think, in the institutions of higher learning. What have you uncovered there?
Okay, well, the ministerial task team, as you say, is for higher education institutions, and it's for universities in particular. So it's looking just at what's happening at universities. And its chief focus right now, I think, is really trying to put together the national policy framework that will guide universities on how they should be developing their response. So the draft framework was put out in May for public comment. One is now going through all the comments that were received and trying to put together from those what it is that one should be recommending to universities, because a policy framework will only provide guidance. Each of our 26 universities is going to have to develop a policy if they don't already have one in place.
Is safety lax in institutions of higher learning? What have you found so far?
You know, it depends on which university you're at. Universities that are better resourced, like Wits, like UCT, which have security, things are better. Go to poorer universities where there isn't funding, and no, the turnstiles don't work, there isn't money to repair the fences, and some of this is backlogs left from the student protests in 2015 and 16. Some of it is the fact that universities are getting more money in order to pay student fees, but they're not necessarily getting the kinds of money that they need in order to put security in place, repair and maintain their infrastructure. So there's a lot of questions here about where we get the money to particularly help poorer universities to do what they need to.
All right, I'll be talking to the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Bladen Zamande. That's at about 8, and I'm going to take this discussion further with him. But for now, thank you very much, Lisa Vetten. She is an associate at the Wits University's Institute of Social and Economic Research.